Hello and welcome to the webinar on the sick building syndrome. Today we'll speak on the results of smart tech implementations to avoid sick building syndrome. And it's my pleasure to welcome two speakers, Idriss Goossens founder and CEO at PropTech Lab, and Wouter Kok, CCO and founder at bGrid. My name is Petr Boruta. I'm head of marketing at Spaceflow, and I will be your host today. The reason why we meet here both with PropTech Lab is both Spaceflow and bGrid is members of this network in Benelux area, Belgium and Luxembourg, and it will be great to hear insights from both Wouter and Idriss. We can go for the next slide, where I will briefly guide you through today's agenda. Shortly, I will give an opportunity to the speakers to introduce themselves and their companies and why they think the topic is important. After that, we will talk about market overview, why this topic is actually important. Some might think that it's not a thing anymore when the pandemic isn't pressing us anymore, but actually post-pandemic, this is still a very important topic as it's related to HVAC, it is related to chemicals used in the buildings, and of course, the health and well-being of the occupiers of those buildings. Idriss will talk about why this is important, what are the driving forces behind, what healthy offices are, what offices that care about tenant well-being and health look like. So a little bit of like a broad perspective on this topic. Then I will talk about what is actually sick building syndrome, why is that important, what sick building syndrome causes, how it can be prevented. And Wouter from bGrid will then talk about best use cases on how to track health and comfort. I think he will talk about also about some of the myths, like the one that the CO2 levels are high when the occupancy of the meeting rooms are high, and he will showcase concrete data from the buildings that bGrid owns in, and this is really interesting. And then with the last point, we will talk about action points and vision for 2023, and there will be also a room for your questions. So feel free to post the questions here in the chat on Zoom, or you can also use the LinkedIn chat function for the event if you were associated with the LinkedIn event. I think we can go for the introduction. So as I said, I'm head of marketing at Spaceflow. What Spaceflow does, we are a tenant experience solution, so we integrate all that you use daily as a tenant or in the residential building or an occupier in the office building. So anything from operations to community services, and also importantly, smart building features. So access system, visitor management system, sensors. So all of this integrated for the comfort of an occupier and also for better operations of the landlord. Wouter, if I can ask you to introduce yourself and your company.
So at bGrid, we deliver really a smart building infrastructure with a software layer on top of it, basically to unlock all that data to third parties like Spaceflow, such that you have a very high quality and easy connection to the building, and then it also allows different stakeholders to have different applications. And for that purpose, we measure a lot of things that happen in the building. We control the spaces, we do the indoor localization, and really in that sense, provide the IoT solution that is necessary to deliver smart buildings. And we do that throughout Europe. We have today a little over 50 different buildings live, and an equal amount of different software partners that use our data from the building.
Thank you. And if I can ask Idriss now to introduce himself.
Yes. Do you hear me? It seems connection is a bit unstable. Does this sound good?
We can hear you. We don't see you, but we can definitely hear you.
Yes, activate the camera. It has to be done, I guess, on the control side. But anyway, I'm very pleased to be here. My name is Idriss. Thank you, Petr and Melis, for the invitation. So 7 years ago, I created PropTech Lab, and now what we do, I think the way I explain what we do to my grandparents, or maybe also to my parents, is that we fight to protect trees. And so the idea is to get rid of pen and papers in construction and real estate to protect trees. And so basically, we are an ecosystem of 300 companies. We have office in 2 countries with the mission to ease the digital and sustainable transformation of real estate. And the way we do this is by giving access to our members to content, events, and services. I think I can now have my camera live so you can see me. Hello, everyone. So I wanted to start with this image because the purpose of the session today is actually to deep dive into the bright side of the image, right? Where the world seems beautiful, sunny, where the city is livable, lovable, and healthier and climate friendly, right? So we will zoom in a specific topic today, which is the sick building syndrome, as Petr explained. And so we will see what are the symptoms and how we can solve these topics. But maybe if we go to the next slide, I'd like to first take a step back, reminding the rising importance of the ESGs, because in fact, health is probably the common ground of all of the different ESG issue criteria. So you know that we have the EU Green Deal, the climate law, and a whole set of regulations that are going to be implemented in the next few years, aiming for the real estate sector to decrease by 55% the CO2 emissions by 2030 in order to become carbon neutral by 2050, right? And so this comes with penalties, pressure points, I mean financial pressure points, and so it will really force the sector to do its transformation. But as we always say, innovation is a collective sport that we can only win in partnerships, that we can only win in ecosystem and in teams. And so if we go to the next slide, there is by chance a army of solutions available. This is an overview of some of the members of PropTech Lab, but there is plenty of solutions, including Spaceflow and bGrid, obviously, which are the champions ones, that are available for partnerships with real estate corporates to help them to become ESG pioneers and improve their ESG performance, right? And so going to the next slide, I can't stress enough that we shouldn't see PropTech as only high-tech solutions. In fact, tech means, according to me, tool for change. And so it can be high-tech, software, hardware, etc., but it can also be low-tech, new construction materials that are going to make more healthy buildings or less dangerous for the health building, I would say. But it can be also new business models, co-living, co-working, co-cooking, etc., etc. So there's a lot of solutions available. In fact, in Europe, you have 3,500 startups in PropTech. Not all of the solutions are related to health, but in fact, these 3,500 startups are all structured according to 2 main innovation drivers, which are related to health in a way, the idea of customer centricity and the idea of efficiency. So if we go to the next slide, customer centricity, it means understanding who are the end users, what are their needs, how can we serve better their needs, and shift from an asset-based industry to a service-based industry, or shift from a product-centric approach to a customer-centric approach. So it also means how can we make the life of the end user healthier and better, right, with less of headaches. And then on the other, the second innovation driver is the idea of efficiency. How can we optimize tools, processes in order to become digital native, tech-powered, and reach operational excellence? And so PropTech, we often say that it's composed by 5 categories: invest, finance, design, build, market, transact, manage, operate, live, and work. And health is a topic that we can address all across the life cycle of the building, I think. But if you agree with this angle of view that we have 5 categories and 2 innovation drivers on the next slide, this in fact brings us to 10 innovation spaces, and we have here listed 47 innovation themes. So it's a sort of matrix of everything that exists in PropTech, like which is grouped by families or subsegments. And so bGrid will be able to speak about how in the manage and operate phase we can tackle health related to issue from property managers, landlords, owners, asset managers, etc. Spaceflow will explain how the end users can benefit from a healthy environment with communities and services. And I would like maybe to focus on what happens before when we design a real estate project. So more focusing on the design and build phase. Going to the next slide, which I forgot. Yes, and I would like also to explain that the 23 trends, as we just kicked off the year, are the following ones. So a year ago, the terminology retrofit tech didn't exist. As well, the terminology urban tech. So these are the 2 new rising verticals, I would say, some sort of subcategories of PropTech. So retrofit tech refers to any technology that you can deploy in the existing building. While before, PropTech also included a lot of new builds, buildings, and so. But the elephant in the room is the existing building, because 70% of the building existing in 2050 are already here today, and so we need to renovate them. And the second idea, urban tech, takes into consideration that PropTech was what was happening within the square meters of a building, but now we need to go a little bit higher and also connect different buildings and innovate in anything that happens between buildings. And so that's at the city, at the level of a piece of a neighborhood or at the level of cities. And so it takes into account also everything related to mobility and to energy. And so I think these are the 2 new movements of innovation trends that happen in our space today. And so we will, of course, zoom into the health today, but I wanted to give the helicopter view first. I guess it's my last slide for the introduction. No, the last slide is this one, hopefully, which explains which are, according to us, the innovation trends in the office, since it's the asset class we will focus on today. So we think that these are the trends that are shaping the office of tomorrow. So first, the importance of service and communities. So delivering empty square meters is not enough anymore. We need to deliver services and communities. Second, creating a very strong branding. And I have 3 more slides. Thank you. It's like when Hilton was taking under management an hotel, sorry. The value of the building, just because of the logo Hilton, increased. It was the same building, same location, same quality, etc. But you had the branding of Hilton, the network effect, and so the value increased. So I think still the value of the branding increased the value of the building. We think the office of tomorrow is a decentralized network of satellite offices which are connected. It's a place that makes you more productive, a place that makes you healthy, with sustainability as main competition differentiator. And just what more productive and more healthy means, it can be not only high-tech solutions, it can also include access to daylight, access to fresh air and not recycled air, access to fresh food, access to exercise, etc., etc. So it's also low-tech innovations, but just putting health as a central focus of innovation on the building. Is the cost of facility by 50%.
I think, Idriss, we're losing your audio. At least I do.
I'm also not hearing Idriss.
Okay.
Maybe if you can reconnect and repeat.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Am I back? Cool. Okay, so I was just saying that it can be an office with as well also a community app for the end users that improves the engagement of end users. It can be also with fresh air, not recycled air. It can be an office that measures the vacancy, the air quality, the space of the usage, etc., thanks to bGrid, for instance. And so the building of tomorrow that puts health at the center should be in partnership with all of these different potential startups that will help the building to become customer-centric, healthier, and also more efficient. And so going to the next slide, I think, and this is maybe the conclusion of the introduction, we have a generational opportunity, if not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, to become customer-centric. And so if we look at all of the tech giants, what do is they fight for the number of minutes or hours that we spend on their platform every day. And so they integrate any aspect of our daily lives to make sure that we are captive. We're captive in the way we're looking for information, we consume videos, we do payments, etc., etc., etc. And so given the fact that we spend 85% of our time indoor, in home, in the office, in a transport infrastructure, etc., I think we have for developers or landlords or asset managers a unique opportunity to try to integrate any aspect of our daily lives inside buildings. And so the dream could be, look, I have a headache because I have too many meetings, or I want to track the number of calls that I made in my office. Why wouldn't it be possible that maybe there is a tablet in the wall that is going to track the number of calls that I made? Or I don't know, it's just an example, but there is a lot of things that are painful happening inside buildings. And if the buildings could ease this and do it instead of us, that would be, I think, the next. I mean, that's a huge opportunity so buildings is more than square meters. It's also giving services for any aspect that we need when we are inside the buildings. So it becomes a one-stop shop. And so that's a bit the idea. And we will deep dive into what does it mean for health today. It's all I had, I guess, for this first part. Passing the torch to, I guess, Petr.
Yes, we can move on. So as a wrap up of what Idriss said about and grounding the topic to the sick building syndrome, these are the market trends and drivers behind why having healthy building is important. Feel free to use the chat function here on Zoom and vocalize your opinion, what you think is important and why this topic is important, or perhaps why you joined the call, what you want to learn today. So if we talk about ESG, obviously the important letter here is E, importance of environmental aspect, environmental control, And I think we all know from the discussions in the market, but also with the upcoming regulation of EU and already regulation that is in place, that this will be something that will totally transfer the market. And this obviously has impact on HVAC operations, on air quality. By 2025, buildings would need to log and analyze 80% of their HVAC operations. That's just one thing, and that is really just behind the corner. It's 2 years, and so landlords need to act now in order to become compliant with this regulation. But also well-being and human-centric approaches to work and living. I think it's something that we already see that the tenants demand in vast amount. It's the certifications, but also are the tenants having enough space to not only work but also to relax? Is the environment healthy? Do they have community events and so on? Importantly, role of technology. I think that was last Idriss slide. We see the importance of it in every aspect of our life, and importantly, this should be also transferred to the buildings, and occupiers should have access to real-time data instantly anywhere possible. You will see soon on the next slide the numbers on this. Last point, sorry, one before last point, is the competitive office environment, obviously due to influx of flex operators that change the experience of the occupiers. Landlords increasingly need to put to look at the well-being and healthiness. So we can go for the next slide. Some interesting numbers here, I think. 3/4 of employees around the world are concerned about the air quality, and we already have 50% of employees getting regularly informed about it. Obviously, the higher the number here, the better, but I think it's a good basis already. 43% of office occupancy as the normal. Obviously, this differs in the regions of the world and country by country. In Europe, it is slightly higher. And obviously, if the air quality, if you see that employees are concerned about air quality, and we have the 43% of office occupancy, if you don't have your office healthy, that obviously has impact too outside of other factors. And $6.2 billion, that's how much the global air quality monitoring system market is expected to reach by 2027, so in 4 years. So what is sick building syndrome? Why we talk about this? So the sick building syndrome is defined as the acute health or comfort-related effects of weak indoor air quality. This can be localized in certain areas of the building, notoriously the meeting room where the people gather in a small space, but also canteens and other areas where a lot of people are at the same time. And we should say that sick building syndrome mostly happens in open plan offices. So we talk here about today the office buildings mostly. Should be obvious, but we can move on. What is the reasons? What aspects cause the sick building syndrome? So it's the poor ventilation or poorly maintained air conditioning system, or ineffective at the time of the high need. I think Wouter will have great examples from the buildings that they monitor. It can be cheap materials used during construction, but also used on everything that is around you. So that is furniture. It can be chemicals. It can be fabrics and so on. Dust, smoke, fumes, or fabric fibers in the air. but also too bright or flickering lights. And also if the cleaning and the layout itself is poor, you have many people at the same area, you don't follow the guidelines, you obviously have an issue too. Also, one of the aspects, if you don't have the openable windows, and you need to pay even more attention to how is the HVAC operation managed. And what is actually sick building syndrome mean? What is sick, like what it causes? It's anything from headache to dizziness, nausea, irritation in eyes, obviously low energy, difficulty in concentration. And this is all clearly health related, and it impacts health of the people. So that's one aspect, but also if you calculated how much it costs companies, the unproductive employees for every hour, and if you multiply that by the number of people sitting in those buildings, it's a huge amount of loses as well. But obviously the health aspect is the most important here. And that also is the answer one, why should office managers and HR representatives care about this? So obviously decreased concentration, lower job satisfaction, diminishes productivity, and that effect is then transferred to landlords. Why should they care? Obviously, especially in the times of low office occupancy, sick building syndrome can lower that occupancy even low. It can mean shorter tenant retention and satisfaction with the building and the area that occupiers use. And I think this we can now give a word back to Idriss that will present some of the best buildings in Europe in terms of healthiness and well-being, and again why that is important.
Thanks, you, Petr. So it's I made a selection of some of the buildings that I thought were deserved to be under the spotlight in a way, right? And so this is my humble opinion, of course. I think the first one is really this set of buildings. So it's a large-scale urban development project by Bouygues Immobilier in Lyon. So Bouygues Immobilier, one of the 5 biggest developers in France, part of the Eureka Confluence project. And so why is it very innovative? Because you basically have they designed this whole project with one central focus of innovation, which was health. And so it means they have they included into the development a fab lab dedicated to health and beauty, aimed at transforming every of the future occupants, tenant of buildings or just inhabitants. So convert them into sort of ambassadors of their own wellness and health. So it's a fab lab where you can launch stuff, you can try stuff, you can be informed, etc. So it's a space dedicated to well-being. They have also this how they call it a green island at the center, which is peaceful and therapeutic. They have also an indicator of well-being, which is outside screens, explaining what is the quality of the air, of the noise, of the pollution, etc., with some sort of incentives for people to contribute to having this place healthy. They have also zero stress office, which are well certified. And then back to the first, like the innovation trends that I presented before. On top of the square meters, they have also a lot of different services, including services dedicated to health. So going to the next slide, they have all of these different services. So they have services of mutualization of parking, car sharing in real time, etc., etc. They have services of health. And they have also services dedicated to well-being. So they have a local hospital, for a small hospital for the neighborhood where people can go. They have also some services, so on-demand services related to health and beauty. So it can even be a nail bar. So it's not a must-have to have a nail bar in office, but it's just an example of how far you can go if you want to put health and well-being as a central pillar in the design of your product. And so I think this dimension of services really become market standards. It's like being BREEAM Excellence certified for a building. If you're not BREEAM Excellent, you're just you're just not market standard. It's what Petr was explaining about the importance of certification. And so going to the next project, I think it's a project of Allianz Real Estate. It's a Vertigo project in Luxembourg. And so I think they deserve to be here in a health perspective, because first, they deployed solutions like Delta Q to have an optimal thermal and energy consumption based on the occupancy of end users. But also they have this app to create community and to activate all of the services available around the building, including food services, for instance, to facilitate access to fresh foods. And this app is Spaceflow. So I think it was very interesting, because why should the landlord pay an app, for instance? But in fact, because it's increased the tenant satisfaction, the tenant well-being, the tenant health in a way, and so it increases the life cycle of the tenants and increases the value of the building at the end of the day. And then the last project, I think, that I wanted to present really briefly, but happy to explain more after in the Q&A part, is this project. So K-West by Immobel and BPI, some of the largest developers in Belgium. And why? So it's a mixed-use project, including office and residential in Brussels. And I thought it was very smart, because they put access to food as one of the central aspects. And in fact, if you think, food is maybe the most important element in our health, because if we eat well, we can also basically get rid or avoid many potential disease and sickness. And so the way they did this is by creating an urban farm available to the public, but with a preferred access for the local end users to the food. So it's a way to have a closed circle of fresh food. And so if any developers wanted to use maybe the roof of the surfaces to implement urban farming, it could also be a game changer in terms of health for the cities. And so I wanted to bring this topic, which is at the crossroad between PropTech, urban tech, health tech. But I think it's something that can be with a bright future. So these were some of the projects I think that were worth mentioning. But happy to continue the conversation after. I think your turn, Wouter, to enlighten us.
Yes. So I think if we look at like all these projects we're developing and the technology that is available, it creates, you know, a lot of dreams, you know, a lot of things that we look forward to, that we think, hey, you know, with all this tech, we would expect the building, right, that really has this you know, automated controls of your health and your climate and your comfort. And so you really expect something that works really well, that you can adjust, like you can do at home, right? You can control your temperature in your home from your phone. You expect to be able to do the same in the office. Where what we get actually in reality is a lot of poor air quality conditions, a lot of discomfort, a lot of meetings that take place in the office have to do so in meeting rooms with really conditions that do not help us to be creative or concentrate or pay attention. And even the data about how those conditions are typically unavailable, right? Maybe at some point, like Petr mentioned, we can have some information about the air quality in the building, but very hardly it is available about the space that we're actually using at that time. where what we should be able to get with the technology that's available, we should be able to get the data-driven design, where we do not design based on best practices that at best are based on information from decades ago, but that are based on actual information from operational projects. And that we can also use that data then in the ongoing business to, with AI, get a proven validation of the comfort system. And that may sound obvious, but in reality, it is not. And from there, we can then start working and really enhance the comfort and share the data about the comfort and the health and well-being of the spaces we're working in with the different stakeholders through different applications such as Spaceflow and others. Now, if we look at in more detail about what we are getting, let me see if I can do this. Yeah, what we're getting. So if we look at the buildings where we have our system live today, a little bit over 50 different buildings in Europe, what we see, and that's like the first part of information here at the top left, is that over 30% of all the buildings that we're in, on average, have meeting room conditions over the past 4 months in 2022 that are really not very good. They're poor, and 10% of them are actually very poor. And maybe the good thing for the people that own and occupy these buildings is that these are not exceptions. They're not like incidents. It's more the pattern in the industry. And then indeed, very often people think that this occurs when, spaces are overcrowded and there are just a lot of people in the building. But at the same time, if you look at the occupancy data from those projects, on average, in that same period, the occupancy was 46%, with a variance between 12 to 18% on like incidents on different days. But if you look at the utilization, so that means, okay, I might have a meeting room and the meeting room is occupied, but it makes quite a big difference if there is one person in a 10-person meeting room, or if there are 10 of them, right? So if you look at the average utilization of those assets as a whole, they are 24% on average, with a variance between 5 to 45%. So it means that we are really only using a small part of the space that's available in the room, and still we get poor air quality conditions. So the conclusion here can only be that, by what has been designed, by how it has been built and how it's being automated, enough fresh air should be available, but that air is not, in the way it is supplied to the different spaces, it is not adapted to the occupancy or the utilization or how we use the buildings. And this creates a combination, which is actually very sad, of unnecessary discomfort, unhealthy conditions, with energy being wasted in trying to create healthy conditions that are just not taking place in the way that we use the building. Now, if we want to look about how can we improve this, I do need to share a little bit about what we actually do. And what we do is part of a bigger picture. And I think this is like the narrative that you're already hearing from Petr and from Idriss. It is about health and air quality and those kind of things in combination with saving energy, reducing the cost effectiveness, right, of the building, but also adapting to trends like hybrid working and whatever we're going to have in a couple of years. That's the bigger picture, what we're trying to do. And if you want to build something like that, we like to use the analogy of a smartphone, because I think we can learn a lot from that, right? If we buy a smartphone, nobody's going to ask us, okay, Wouter, tell me which applications do you want to use, and then we can tell you which phone you need. No, we all buy more or less the same phones, and we use them in different ways. We tailor them to our needs by the applications that we install on them. We're not restricted by that to only use the applications from the brand of the phone, only Apple or Google. And over time, these changes, right? And the way you achieve an infrastructure or a structure like that is by supplying a high quality hardware with open operating system that's continuously developing and bringing new features, and that provides flexibility in which applications you install on them. And if we do this, we don't longer need to design to the user requirements of today, we can build something that is built to continuously adapt to those user requirements that we know that are going to change. Now, how do we do this? So in our solution, we measure everything in the space about how the building is being utilized, about health and comfort, about other things like sound and those kind of things. But we also at the same time control the space on a local level, and we can position everything in the space. Now, those three types of data, so sensing, control, and positioning, we then unlock through our infrastructure, which is at the bottom, and then our cloud, which continuously adds new features to third-party applications. Now, if we have this structure, which we today have in more than 50 buildings, we obviously can see a lot about what's happening in the building, and we can start using that to improve, right? And this improvement we do in 3 steps. So the first step is that we do data-driven design with partners in the industry, obviously. So we work with architects and design companies for the HVAC system, and consultants, to improve the best practices, because we see a lot about how the buildings are actually being used, and we can use that data to help improve the best practices. So for example, we see that the utilization of a building and the occupancy is a lot lower all the time in every project than what it's designed for, but it's also a lot more dynamic. So it pays, for example, to invest in the ability to really bring the fresh air where you can see in real time that it is necessary, in contrast to having more fresh air available all the time, but supplying it in a much more static way to the different spaces where actually at that point in time, there might not be no need, there might be no people. So this is step 1, the data-driven design. Then step 2 is that we validate that what has been designed and built actually works. So standard HVAC commissioning today is basically, we hardly test, if at all, if the controls in a room, if the way that we ensure that there's good air quality actually works. And the reason I'm mentioning this is obviously that we see in reality that a lot of the times the building automation and the HVAC system do not work well. What we can do with this infrastructure is we can provide 100% validation automatically and continuously, and make sure that the system in the bottom, or in the beginning at least, performs well, and that we keep monitoring and validating that. Then the next step, the third step, is that we start making this control adaptive. So in our data, we can see with very high probability how the building will be used tomorrow, next week, Monday, etc. And you can start controlling the HVAC system, and this is what we do with what we call Be Adaptive. You can start controlling it based on the real-time data and the forecasted data to really make sure that we deliver good air quality and good comfort where there are people and to their needs, and that we don't do this where they're not. And this actually is very strong because it saves energy and it improves the air quality. And I think this is a very powerful example of how new technology into real estate for these changing needs can deliver value on seemingly contradicting things like saving energy and providing good indoor quality. So I think that's one of the key takeaways that we're seeing in how we deal with this topic on the operational side as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Wouter. And so as a wrap, now, what do you think are the action points for landlords and operators for 2023? What they should focus on, what they should do?
Yeah, so what we see is that there is a great need for solutions that improve the energy efficiency of buildings. There is by regulation, but also because of the high energy prices. And I think to make that a solid value, something that is the value itself is sustainable, meaning that it's not something of just today, but that will, the value will keep going on for the next couple of years. We need to combine it with also improving the indoor comfort We see actually a lot is the opposite, right? Where people shy away from saving energy because they fear that it will increase discomfort, increase complaints. And yeah, the reality is that, you know, not having a satisfied tenant or not having complaints within your tenant organization has, you know, typically is higher on the agenda than saving energy. So we need to combine those two. And we need to do that knowing how the buildings are actually being used, right? And where the problems really occur. We can't do this based on best practices that just are disconnected from how buildings actually perform and are being utilized. I think bringing those two domains together, energy, health and comfort, and design and actual utilization, I think that's the key focus for 2023.
Mm-hmm. Before I pass the word to Idriss for the same question, if you, anyone out of the audience, if you have a question, please feel free to use the chat and we will answer that. And so, Idriss, what do you think are actions for 2023? And maybe if you can tie it to the Benelux market, where you have the data and you are in talks.
Sure. So I think I completely do agree with Wouter's I would say key takeaways. I think the approach should be different whether we speak about new buildings that are currently in design phase, pre-permit, and the existing building. And probably the focus, if we want to move a bit the needle, should be on the existing building, where you currently have people, where you currently have potentially health issues, or maybe a big portion of the portfolio are a sick building syndrome, have the sick building syndromes. And so I think the first step should be customer centric and building centric. So it means have a clear view on the current portfolio that you have under management as a REIT. So understand really clearly all of the key metrics of the buildings and be able to capture them maybe remotely thanks to solutions. So it means hardware, it means software, but understand the energy consumptions, the vacancy rates, the number of people in buildings on average, how long do people stay in buildings, what they do in buildings, how do they consume the square meters, and understand what are their needs, understand if there are new things you could launch to improve their experience, improve their health, etc. So you can, I guess, not start taking actions without having a clear view on the current data, on the current needs. And so I think it should be baby steps. The first one being capturing the data, treating the data, creating models. Once you have the data, you can define your priorities. At the company level, and then on every project, what project should be number one priority, and also have an approach of test and learn. So test an innovation on one specific site, measure if it was a success or not, and if it was a success, generalize the usage on the rest of the portfolio if you can. So harmonize and standardize. So that would be a bit my approach. It's I guess it's a high level answer, which is more of a strategic, but that would be, I think, at least it's what I hope that we will see more in the next 12 months.
And how much of that, what you just said, you already see in the market? And again, if we can maybe talk about the Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, which at least I see a little bit as a role model for other countries in the terms of adoption.
So the first part of the question was how much what?
How much of what you said you are currently seeing adopted already in the market?
I think the innovation maturity of the real estate corporate in Belgium is way higher today than it was last year, and so I can answer you very concretely. We have established a model where there are 5 metrics to define the innovation maturity of the corporates. and there are 5 stages of innovation maturity. So whether they have one person in charge of innovation full-time, if they have a percentage of the budget allocated to innovation, if they have a clear innovation focus, a clear innovation strategy, and if innovation is part of the executive committee agenda structurally, so always. And so from the numbers we had last summer, so summer 22, no, summer 21, I think there was less than 30% of the real estate corporates in Belgium who had 1% dedicated to innovation. And 12 months after, so this summer in 22, there was, I think, 83% or 84% of them that had a person full-time dedicated to innovation. So that's a clear sign that there is a high concern and a high priority for innovation. But so I guess we're in the learning phase still. So the people started to work on innovation, and now they need to transform, and they need to adapt, and they need to, because the first few months of a chief innovation or head of innovation are to understand what are the players, what are the pain points, etc. And after you can understand, and after you can size the impact of their work. So I guess it's still at the beginning. We are entering the transformational phase, and it will only accelerate. So I'm not sure I answered your question.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And since we don't have any questions from the audience, there's one from Wouter. Do you have any last comments, or you?
I think from our side, you know, if I think we shared a lot of information. I can imagine that people, you know, in the takeaway come up with questions. Feel free to reach out to us or via the obviously Petr contacts from Spaceflow. Happy to share more. You know, there's limited time. We just tried to share a first glimpse of what is possible and what we're seeing. If people are interested to see more, then just reach out.
Yeah, thank you. So for anyone interested, this video was recorded, so there will be a recording that we will send you via emails. And also feel free to subscribe more events and webinars in the future. We have now one scheduled in February already with conscious co-living, and there will be more. And same applies, I guess, to bGrid and PropTech Lab for their events. So thank you for the insightful conversations today, Wouter and Idriss. Thank you to our audience who stayed until the very end, and happy to see you again on some other occasion.